Welcome to part one. Let's continue where we left off. So let's see, where do we need to start from? So let me open the project, and then whilst that project is opening, let me open the PDF, the past paper. Um, okay, so I think we're done with one of the classes, right? Yeah, I think we're done with one of the classes. And then if it's within the larger radius, then you set it, yeah. So we're done with noise splasher. So we're done implementing the noise splasher. Now what we need to implement is the, what's the other one? Solid splasher. So now we need to come here and implement the solid splasher. So this will be obj image, image. All right, so let's implement that. So let me go to my PDF and see how the solid splasher should be implemented. It splashes based on what was previously described. So let me scroll up and see what was described. So the solid splasher, right? So the solid splasher randomly generates several row or column coordinates from the image and only draws solid circles around them as follows. For each generated location, meaning we're going to generate a random row and a random column. And then for each of those generated location, meaning RC, because remember on a Cartesian plane, that location is denoted by XY, right? In our case, it's going to be denoted by RC or row column. A solid circle must be drawn onto the image, right? Only one of the two radii must be used to draw the circle. The radius to be used must be chosen randomly and then divided by 3, which is quite a lot, right? It's quite a lot. So that means every time we draw they say, you see what they told you here? For each generated location, right? So for each generated location, you need to draw a solid circle. And then the radius to use, it depends on the probability, the choice that will be made based on a random value. So we can make a random integer, basically 1 or 2. So we can, and then 1 would mean that we choose the smaller radius or the larger radius in whatever way you want to structure it. So it generates several locations, right? So that means I'll go through all my rows and columns, and then I generate a random row, right? I generate a random row. This might be a bit tricky on how you should solve it. Let me see. Remember, to test if a point lies within a circle, you must determine its distance from the center of the circle lies within the radius using the Euclidean distance formula for 2D space. So we need to use a distance formula to check if it's within the range. So we did create that, if I'm not mistaken, in color splasher. Yeah, there's the function. So we did create it. So we're gonna just use it now. So what is it? It's called distance, right? Color splash, where is it? Yeah, it's called distance. So let me see. Should I go through let me see, how many values are there? For each generated location, a solid circle must be drawn. The thing is, you don't know how many times you're supposed to do that. Like how many times are you supposed to randomly generate the rows and the columns, like the coordinates. How many times is supposed to generate it? So let me scroll down a bit and see if there's something that can help me understand how you're supposed to do it. Okay, here it just talks about overriding. So it's not really stated. So what if we go through each location, row, column, right? Then I think we have to do it that way. We have to go through every single row and column because they even point out that you need to use the distance formula or the distance function if you have a distance function. So let's go through the rows and columns. So for unsigned short, r is equals to 0, r is less than obj image dot get rows. And mind you, this is not advisable to always do this. You see this section here. On each iteration or on each step, you keep calling the get rows function, which is a bit unnecessary, right? You could do this and just initialize it once because remember in a for loop, this first part we call it the initialization, and it gets executed once the first time we enter into this loop. So therefore, we'll save a lot of time. So let me cut that and put it here, then use those rows that I've created there. It might look like insignificant, right? It's like I really did much, but I really did a lot. This will improve my code to make it a bit faster. So for unsigned short C, and then calls is equals to obj dot get calls, and then C is less than calls C++. It might look insignificant, right? Like it's nothing. Okay, this shouldn't be a semicolon, this should be a comma. And then, yeah, it doesn't look, I didn't change much. I just created a variable to store those rows that I get from my UJ image. So I did that so that I call that function once to make my application a bit faster. So every time we need to generate a random row and a random column. If you check our main, it does seed the random generator, right? Meaning that we would always get a unique value every time we run the app. So we don't have to seed it here within this class. It will be done inside main.cpp. So here I just work as if it's already seeded. I just assume it's already seeded. So I need to generate a random row and a random column. So in what range can a random row and random column be in? So a random row can be within the range of 0 up to my rows, of which I need to get them by saying obj image.get rows. And then remember, if I start counting from 0, that means I stop at the number before. So -1. So that would be the range that I can generate in. And then the other one is the column is pretty much the same thing, but then we're looking at the columns. -1 since I'm counting from 0. And then let me create it then. So unsigned short, but then remember we need to use the random function, right? But remember we did store the rows and columns inside those variables. So I'll use those variables instead. So unsigned row is equals to, inside the standard namespace, the random function, and then you mod it by, or you apply the modulus by your range, right? So in this case, what will be the range? So the range will be, yeah, the range would be my rows, right? -1, right? And then it's upper, for the formula to find the range, it's upper minus lower. The upper range is rows -1, and then minus the lower range, which is just a 0. And just subtracting 0 makes no difference. So therefore here I need to mod it by rows -1. And I must put brackets for emphasis so that my C++ knows that I mean do this first. before you apply it to the rand function. And then if you wanted to start at a specific value, you need to say plus the lower. What is the lower here? It's going to be 0. So you could just put the plus 0, which is fine, but it's not going to really make any difference because it's just adding 0. So I'll just leave it there just to remind you that you need to always add the lower if you wanted to start at that specific lower value or lower bound. Then here, I'm going to say calls. I'm going to say calls -1. It's pretty much the same thing as the previous one. And then obviously I need to comment this out. So now I have the random row and random column, right? I don't know how many times must you do this. Must you do it outside the, let me see, must you do it outside this loop, like the inner loop or the outer loop? Let's just think about it a bit. So for each generated location, a solid circle must be drawn onto the image. So for each generated circle, so I could make a slight variation, but we'll see. We'll see if it's going to draw it the way it's supposed to draw it. So I'm going to say if, okay, before I do that, I also need to generate a random row, random integer, right? Because they said between the two radii, right? The one that will be chosen is the one, it's based on it's random. So I need to generate a random integer, right? Between 1 and 2. So unsigned short, and then I'll call it radii, just for the random radii is standard namespace, and then the rand function modded by what is the range. So I want to generate a value between 1 and 2. So this means that the range will be upper, which is 2, minus lower, which is 1. So 2 minus 1 is just 1. And I want it to start at exactly 1, so I need to add back a 1. So I need to say multiply by 1 plus 1. So I need to put brackets here for emphasis. But then it doesn't really matter because the division has a higher order, or it will be executed first. Remember, BODMAS. So it's fine. I can leave it as it is. And then semicolon there. And then based on the integer, let's say if it's a 1, it's 1, then use small radius. And then else use large. So I need to do an if statement. So if rand radii equals 1, then I need to make use of the smaller radius. Else, I could just do an else, but I will say else if radius is equals to 2, then I do the larger. So this will be smaller radius, and then this will be larger radius, right? Then let's use it. So remember to check if it's within the radius, you do an if statement. You say if the distance, right, between what point and what point, my circle is center. So in this case, we found a random row and random column. That will actually act as the circle's center. So I'm going to say R, and then it's supposed to, you need to pass in Y1. So that's RC, and then X2, that will be that circle's center. And then Y2, that will be the circle's center. So call, and then check if that is less than or equals to smaller radius. Why smaller radius? Because the random value was 1. And then if it is less than or equals to that smaller radius, then we draw the circle. The part that I was saying, which we'll see, is that remember the if statement only executes once. So it's most likely going to draw a dot. We could technically do this and say while to just keep on doing that, but it's fine. Let's see if it's going to draw the way it's supposed to draw. So after finding that, we need to what? Set the pixel, right? So I need to set the pixel. So I need to say obj image dot set color. Okay, I've called it set color. It takes in a specific row and a specific column, right? So it's that specific row and a specific column. Set it to what color? To let's also set it to blue. So it's red, green, blue, RGB. So red is 0, green is blue is 0, and then blue is 255, the maximum intensity. So UJ color, what other, it had the probability, right? Do we use the probability? They didn't talk about it. Yeah, here they didn't talk about using the probability. So we're just gonna leave the probability as it is. And then okay, so I'll just set the probability to like 0, which is fine. And then I'll pretty much do the same thing for larger radius. So I'm gonna do that. But then now we are using the larger radius. And then that's pretty much what you need to do. Yeah, that's pretty much what you need to do here. So we'll see when you try to output it and see if it's going to work. So that's pretty much the solid splash, right? So um, remember to test if a point lies within a circle. Yeah, we did test that. So it's fine. We have that. So now the important thing is the file handling. So if we go back to your main.cpp, they did create functions here. You see, you should call it this, and it takes in a string. You should call it this, save to that. It says that this is supposed to save to a binary file. This one's supposed to read from the text file. So we need to create these two functions, and they're inside what? UJ image, because obj2 is an instance of UJ image. So I need to go back to my UJ image.h, and as you can see, it's mostly void functions. Yeah, it's void. You don't store, you don't return anything. So I'm gonna come here and then create functions for file handling. So like I said, it's called void, and then the actual function and name. If it doesn't match, your program is gonna crash. So hence I'm looking at the main.cpp because it needs to run with that main.cpp they gave you. And then this will be a standard string, and then takes in the file, right? And then void save to that, which also takes in a string which will represent the file name. So I'll also call it file, right? So I'm gonna go back here, then I'm gonna double check, yeah, save to that. And both methods take in the string. So let me see if I imported the string. Okay, it's not imported or included. So hash included string, because the string is a class, it's an object. So I need to include its header file. So let's scroll down to the file handling part and see what should we do. So define a color record structure as per the given table with alignment padding disabled, right? Add the member function to the UJ, blah, blah, blah. So let's start by dealing with this part. So we need to disable alignment padding. If I'm not mistaken, alignment padding is basically like those spaces that when you write to a file, especially writing to a binary file. Remember when you write to a binary file, we're just writing zeros and ones to the binary file. But those zeros and ones, right, they were objects first, right? Or it was a record structure. So it was UJ color. So what it does when you save to a file, right, it's going to say UJ color, and then it appends an arbitrary number of spaces, right, to split them apart, and then it appends another space. But then the problem is those spaces might not be the same, right? Those spaces, as you can see, this space and that space, they're two different spaces. So in order for us to sort of like have that consistent feel or consistent look, or to just remove those spaces, we could tell um, we could just store it one after the other, but then to tell the computer how big each UJ color is. So we could say that each UJ color is 1 byte. So it's going to say C1 there and then C2. So that means it knows that it needs to travel on exactly 1 byte to read each UJ color. So they say it travels, and then it goes and it gets up to here. Then it says, oh, I've actually read 1 byte, so here I need to split. I need to stop there. So that means the next thing that comes is a different UJ color. And then it gets there, it's like, okay, now I'm at the second byte, that's UJ color. And then it moves on to the next one. Now I'm at the third byte, right, and then it moves on to the third one. So it's going to keep doing that. So now it knows when to start and when to stop, and we disabled the alignment padding, which is those spaces. So how do you do that programmatically? So you need to go back to your ujcolor.h and then say hash pragma and then pack, and then you push it, you're gonna push it by 1 byte, right? So this means that each UJ color will be of 1 byte. So you can view this as like us allocating memory and saying the UJ color should be packed or pushed, and it's going to pack it and then push it as 1 byte into the file. After we are done pushing it, we need to pop or release that memory. So hash pragma pack pop. So we need to release that 1 byte, that memory that we've allocated. So it's sort of like this is saying new, and then this is saying delete. So that it's always going to be like that when you disable alignment padding. So this is just disable alignment padding. Yeah, it's pretty much that. I wouldn't say there's anything fancy about it, but yeah, just remember this is how you allocate and this is how you free the memory. And then since we have alignment padding, we are good to go. So I'm going to go back to UJ image, and then now I'm going to copy this and then put it in the UJ image.cpp. It's time to implement it. So I'm going to put it here and say file handling functions, right? And then they are part of UJ image class. So I need to specify that they are part of that class. So UJ image scope resolution operator. This is called a scope resolution operator. And then we go here, UJ image scope resolution operator, and then we're done. So let's read from the text file, right? So if I go back to my project, we can check the text file and see what kind of information was is in the text file, in what order. But most of the time, if you look at if you look at your PDF, right, your question paper, most of the time it's going to be in this order. You see here, in this order over here. So you will have a pixel, right? They might give you its row, the specific row and column, then the red color component, then the green color component, then the blue color component, and then the probability. So it's always in the order of your record structure that you've defined most of the time. But then really don't clarify. So you need to actually think for yourself and see which one is which. Yeah, so as you can see, in this case, we have, like I said, it differs. So in this case, as you can see, we have row 0, column 0. They did provide the columns. And then in that specific column, we have the pixel. So if you see the pixel, it's this, right? And then this would be the probability, a 1. So, but first, before we read each line, right? Remember, this is multiple lines. So I need to read each line. What I need to do is I need to read the two values, the size. So what I'm assuming is that this would be the columns and then the rows, right? We could just double check, right, by looking at these indexes, right? So let me scroll down, right? Yeah, it has to be the rows. Yeah, as you can see, 639. Yeah, so this would be a row 639 column. So I'm assuming it's in that order. It could be vice versa, like columns and rows, but I'm assuming it's going to be rows and columns. So before we start reading each line or get every single line, we need to get these two things, which is the size of the image. So in order to do all of that, remember we're going to need the string stream. So standard string stream SS, I'm going to call it SS in, just like C in, right? SS in or string stream in sin. Yeah, sin doesn't. Okay, let me say SS in. So let's see. So I need to, in my UJ image class, I need to include the string stream header file. So hash include string stream. And then since I'm a little HIJK, okay. So I'm gonna put it here like this, just to sort of like put it in alphabetical order. You don't have to, but yeah. So the very first thing we need to read is, so I need to store unsigned rows. Oh wait, I already have the rows, right? I already have them here. There's the rows and columns. So we're not actually getting the rows from the user, we're getting them from the file. So I need to initialize my rows, but before I do that, right, I need to get the line first, that first line. So I need to pass in the stream or the basic I stream or input stream, which will be that file stream. So I need to create the file stream first. So I need to say f stream to make use of the file stream. And then here hash include f stream for the files to use the files. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say standard. Okay, there's another way you can create a file stream. You can do this, right, and say f stream to make it an f stream object. So it's not really specific whether it's input to output. And then you call it f in, right? And then once you put it, you pass in the file name, right? And then you specify the mode. So now it forces us to specify the mode since it's just the basic f stream object. It neither opens or closes. It sort of like does both. So you need to specify by using by putting in the mode. So I'm going to say standard iOS, right? And then since I want to read, so I'm going to say in, yeah. So standard iOS in, meaning that I'm going to open this file stream object will be created in reading mode or in input mode. So I'll be getting input from the file, meaning that I'm reading the file. So yeah, remember this can be dropped if you said using standard namespace. But I would just leave it this way because I prefer it that way. So remember, at the end of the day, you must always close your file. Close your file or close the connection. It's more or less the connection than an actual file. So let me see if I can demonstrate this. So draw.io. it's more or less of a file of a connection than an actual file. So you're creating a connection between you and your file. Then the file is the one that's in the file explorer. So this is pretty much what happens, right, when you have a file. So when you say a file, when you create a file stream, right, remember a stream is just a way for us to read and write bytes to and from a file. So what happens is this is you, right, over here. And then let's say this is your file over here that's sitting on File Explorer that's saved on your Windows operating system. So this middle thing, we call that the stream. It's like a way for us to transfer that data. So this is the stream. But then since we're dealing with files, so we'll call this a file stream, or in short, F stream. So file stream, or in short, F stream, right? So it's that, and then let me enlarge the text. So this will be the file stream. So this file stream, you can view it as like a bridge, right? You're trying to get to the other side of the bridge. So our file is obviously going to have some text in it, right? Let's say it's hello world. That's the text inside of that file. But in our case, we have image information, right? So that's the data right there. But then remember, even though you might see the file like showing in text mode, every single file that's stored on your computer it's saved in binary mode, meaning the language of the computer, meaning zeros and ones. So what happens is, to make it simple, I'm just going to focus on the text. I won't put in zeros and ones. So this is the text, right? And then what happens is that text travels, it enters through this pipe, right? And then it travels to that user via the file input stream. So what happens is we read from here and then we put it here into this waiting area. And then this guy over here, which is you, the programmer, you use the file stream to read from this file, and then that information gets sent to you. So that's pretty much the flow here. That's what we're doing. So that's why I need to create my file input stream object to create that connection. So you'll see that now there'll be a connection here. You see, I'm connected to my file here. So this part here, we call this the connection. So here we can view this as like the connection. Okay, so we can view this as like the connection or the link between me and my file, right? So I'm linked to my file. So let me do that. Yeah, so I'm linked to my file. And then since my file stream is linked to the file, now the data can get transferred or read and stored into the file stream and then sent to the user. And then once I'm done reading every single thing and passing it via the file input stream, passing it over and over, as long as there's more information to read, then I need to close that connection. So I need to delete this to cut that connection. So it depends in what order are you doing it. So if you are reading, that means this arrow is facing that way, right? That means we are connected to it this way since we are reading from the file. So it's traveling here, going to the file input, file stream, the buffer. It's typically called the buffer, then it's stored in the buffer, and then it's read from the buffer to the user. So once that's done reading, then we cut the cord, we cut the connection. So here we delete that connection. So that's what the closing part does. So I'm going to say fin dot close to cut the connection. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the first line. So standard get line. I could just read them separate. It's fine, but it doesn't matter. So I'm going to say pass in the file, the stream, which is fin, followed by the string that the line that I'm reading will be stored in. So obviously I need to create a line variable. So I will just initialize it to an empty string. Then I pass in that line. So whatever is read, I get the line from this file input stream or from that file. Because remember the file input stream, it has that connection over here. So remember our file that we have, it has the first value as like 640 and then 380 if I'm not mistaken. And then the next lines where we have the other pieces of data. So what happens is it's going to read this first line, right? So copy, read this first line and store it inside the buffer like this, right? So it's going to store it inside this buffer. And then let me make it green. So it's going to store it inside this buffer, which is the rows and columns. And it's going to store them in that exact order they're stored in the file. So that means the first value is the rows, the second value is the columns. So therefore, when I when I read from this file, okay, what am I? Something is not right. What did I do wrong here? Um, Not me forgetting what what did I do wrong here? I'm supposed to pass the so I initialize the file stream object, right? And then I get the line from that file stream object. Um, something something is wrong. What I need to use the string stream. You see now, since my head has been busy dealing with other things, now I'm it's like now I forgot such a small thing. So let me understand the logic. So we create the file stream object and then we pass in the file name and then we specify the mode, right? Straightforward. And then here okay, yeah, it's fine. So we get the line from the file input stream and store it inside this line. But since we want to convert that line to get the specific numbers, I need to insert it into my string stream. So insert the line into the string stream, which is the very first line, which is this one, right? Remember, this line is there's only one of them, right? That line with the rows and columns. That's why I read it outside of while loop. And then once I've read that line, right, what should happen? In that exact same order, I start by reading the rows, then the columns. So let me get those rows and columns. So SS in and store it inside underscore rows. You could also just continue here and say get the next value after rows and store it inside columns. You could just do that. And then I need to say my string stream dot clear. So this will just clear the buffer. So remember what I said, it's in the waiting area. The buffer is like a waiting area. So this waiting area, you see if I try to push in other data, you see what's going to happen? It's going to be appended or right next to each other like this. And there's no space. It's literally going to be right next to each other like that. You see now it's gibberish. Now it's like hard to read. So that's why every time you read a line, you need to clear the buffer. So it needs to delete this, and then you can put in another set of information right there. So let's clear that buffer. So this will just clear the buffer or the waiting area. Waiting area. It's like when you're in a queue, right? They tell you wait there. That's the waiting area. So you can think of that as the buffer, that waiting area. Then now I need to read all of the lines that are available in the file. So while what standard namespace get line from that file input stream and store it inside the string line. But then I need to create those row and column variables, right? R and C. So unsigned short RC, and then we'll just initialize them to 0. You need to normalize initializing your variables. So initialize those to 0. Remember, this is another way of initializing it. You could also, if you wanted to, initialize it using the constructor style, like this, like you're calling a construct. There's many ways to initialize. It's up to you. What feels right to you, or what feels cool. So we've read the line and stored it inside this, and then now I need to insert it inside my string stream. So insert inside of my string stream, and then remember, always clear the buffer. So to clear the buffer, right? So we need to clear the buffer, and then we've read the line. Now we need to extract. So in what order? You see, it always starts with the way you insert, right? It's going to insert 0 first, and then insert 0, then insert 254, insert 254. So it's going to insert it in that same order that you're seeing it, from left to right. So hence, I must assume that I'm reading from left to right. So I'm going to read in a row first. So R. So I'm going to read from my string stream, read in R, right? And then read in C from my string stream, and then read in the red color component, and then read in the green, then read in the blue. So you see, now I need to create all those variables. So I need to go outside and create them here and say red, it should be 0, initialize to 0, set to 0 initially, and then 0, the green, and then blue, set to 0 initially. Or you could, okay, it's fine. Let's leave it that way. Let's do it this way. Red, green, blue, and then intensity. Is it probability, I mean? So unsigned short probability. Initialize it to 0. Since there's quite a lot of variables here, let me just declare them in the next line. So I'm going to declare them here. Yeah. So I have RC, red, green, blue, and probability. So now I can store everything. So remember the order. You always start with red, RGB, red, green, blue, and then read green color, and then read blue color, and then last but not least, read probability color, probability value, right? Then we need to set our pixel. Remember, we have the row and column, and we have the value of the UJ color. How do we set it? You say underscore pixels, and that specific row and column, right, is going to be equals to our UJ color. Remember, there's multiple values, so the curly braces, I can use them to initialize one value or multiple values. So in this case, I'm initializing to multiple values. What are the values? These are the values that I read from the file. So red, green, blue. So red, green, blue, and then probability. And then we've actually read from the file. So this is done. We've read from the file, no issues. So what I'm thinking here, okay, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. We'll see. So we've read from the file. We're done reading from the file. So this is us reading from the file. And then we're going to go down here to save to binary file, which is the easy part. So as long as you remember, reinterpret cast to cast from one pointer value or one type of one pointer with a different data type to another pointer of a different data type. So we're casting pointers. That's when we use reinterpret cast. So let me see the file handling part. What did they say? So add a member function to that will save all the pixels to a binary file of records. So by records, they mean every single record structure. So that means every single UJ color, meaning every single value at row at RC. So unsigned short R is equals to 0. And then remember we need to save space. I'll say rows is equals to, we already have rows. It's within UJ image. So R is less than underscore rows. Yeah, so we don't have to worry about doing that approach. Then unsigned short, C is equals to 0. C is less than underscore calls, C++. And then we write to the binary file. So I need to create the file object, file stream object. So remember what I said, in this case, we just created a file as a file stream. And then we call it f out so that to show you that you don't need to always say if stream or f stream. So this is the tricky part here. Since you are writing to a binary file, so we need to specify two modes. So basically I need to pass in the file that I want to create a link to, and then don't forget to always close the file. So always close the connection, close the connection to the file. So it's f out dot close. So we close that connection. So it needs to take in the file that I'm connecting to, or I'm linking to. And then I need to go to my standard namespace, iOS, and say this is an output mode because I want to write out to that file. But then remember, by default, it assumes you're reading or outputting to a text file. So you need to also append the mode called iOS binary to say that this file should be treated in binary mode, right? How do you do that? Because you can't pass in a third parameter. You do what we call piping, which combines a set of things into one thing. So it's like saying, in a way, it's like a saying, and I'm opening the file in binary mode. That's what it sort of like means. So standard and then iOS binary, um, binary, yeah. So I'm saying do two things. Open it in binary mode, but then open it in such a way that I want to write to that file. So basically I'm writing in binary mode. So that's pretty much what I'm doing there. You could just avoid this and say oh f stream and then just remove this part and that pipe and then just say in binary mode. You could do that. I'm just showing you that there's many ways to do it. So there's the file. How do we write to the file? Simple. F out, you call the write method to write to the file. And you see it expects you to pass the const char pointer. So since our data type is a UJ color pointer. So if I go back here, you see that ours is a UJ color pointer. So we need to reinterpret cast. So force it to cast to that different pointer type. So reinterpret cast to a const char pointer. And remember, it's a pointer. It expects you to pass an address. So what's the thing that I want to write? It's underscore pixels at that specific row and column. But then remember, this is supposed to be cast to a char pointer, so it expects you to pass an address of, that's how you initialize pointers. Remember how you initialize pointers. You have int pointer A is equals to address of B. That's how you initialize, right? So the same way we've been initializing pointers, that's the same way they'd expect you to initialize here. And then after this write method takes two parameters. After this, it takes in the size of that record structure. So since we've set it to 1 byte, so it's fixed, right? So it's going to put 1 byte there. So size, it's going to be size of, there's many ways you can do it. You can just say size of and then you pass the UJ color type. You can do that. Or you can say size of and then pass in the actual pixel. Doesn't really matter. So I could just say size of UJ color like this. So I'll just leave it like that to show you that there's a different way of doing it. And then that writes the pixel, each and every single pixel to the binary file. And then we are done with the file handling. So I think we're pretty much done with everything except for the bonus, right? For the bonus, let me see. I think the bonus that I will attempt will be exception handling. We'll see. So there's my main.cpp. Let me build. I haven't been building. Let me build and see what errors am I getting. So it's complaining apparently about, oh yeah, incomplete. Remember, every time you do a forward declaration, technically it's like you're just creating an empty class. So you need to always include that header file if you end up calling methods from that class. So the UJ image is missing here, and then solid splasher, it's also missing there, so that we avoid secular dependency issues like re-inserting things over and over. So passing const blah blah blah. Okay, so since we are setting, I've totally forgot. Since we are setting or changing the pixel, we shouldn't pass the UJ by const, because const, remember what it means. It means that you shouldn't change. We're not expecting. Um, I'm not expecting to change UJ image in what way, on what in any possible way. So I need to remove that const, and I need to go to my solid splasher. Since I also set the pixel, remove the const, and then solid splasher.h, remove the const, and then I go to my base class and then remove the const. So my base class is color splasher. So there's the color splash and then const. So I just pass it by UJ reference. So I actually want to change the pixels. So that's why I'm changing there. Then max pixel size was not declared. So this is UJ image. Didn't I declare it here? Max pixel size. It is declared. I don't know why sometimes this thing is a very, it gets confused. I don't know why. Because there's max pixel size. It's literally there. And it's under public if it had an issue on that. Oh, I see. This is a friend function. So this pixel is not, it's technically, it's not an inst, I can just pass it as it is because I didn't say here UJ image, blah, blah. So it's the friend function. So I have to access it via this object. But let me teach you something new. If it's a static variable, right? You don't need an instance to use that variable. Remember, we said static. So how would you call it now if it's static? What's the proper way of calling it? To call a static variable, right? You always pass the name of the class like this, especially in C++. The name of the class and then scope resolution operator followed by that specific static variable because it's part of the class. It doesn't depend on a specific instance. Hence, it's called class constants or class variables, class constant variables. And then obviously here we're going to have issues because I forgot to put the semicolon. Also forgot to put the semicolon there to terminate my statement. Okay, there's quite a lot. I also forgot, this is a very tricky thing. If you're calling your enforce range inside methods that put a const, any method that you pass inside of that method will also have a const at the end to say, I also promise that this function it doesn't change anything. Because if it's like this, C++ would be like, well, if this one doesn't have a const at the end, it means that the code inside the check range, it's possible that it's changing something. But then this function should not change anything. So that becomes an issue. So I need to go back to my check range and put a const there to say that I promise this check range does not change anything. Then where I implemented the check range, I need to put a const again. So there's a check range, and then I need to put a const there, and then error is solved. And then I think else, oh, it's not else, it's else if, um, and then build, okay, underscore pixel, it's pixels in plural, and then no matching function core. Well, you see that C++ is kind of weird sometimes because it says there's no matching function call with those two parameters. So I think it expects you to also pass the default color pixels. So let me do that. So, and remember what I said about constants, right? You can static variables, I mean, you can just use the name and then call it. So I'm gonna it's written static, so I can just call that by saying it's part of UJ image. So UJ image, and then default pixel, and then build, and then I keep making mistakes. It's pixels, and this time around I have a lot of errors. So invalid, yeah. So we need to fix this part. So you say, remember, this was just a normal life cycle management thing. But then now remember, color splasher is incomplete. Would you move into an accommodation that there's no doors or windows? Exactly, you wouldn't because it's what? It's incomplete, it's abstract. So the same reason why you can't do that, the same reason here you can't create that object. Because remember here, we're instantiating or bringing that object to life. It's like you are literally building the house. So would you build an incomplete house? Nope, you wouldn't do that. So we need to understand what way to create it, right? We could check here. They might have explained. Seems like they really didn't explain. Let me see. Yeah, they didn't really explain, but let me see. Maybe it's up there. Let's go up. Okay. And the probability must be computed randomly using the current seed value. Blah, blah, blah. And then circles of the same color splashed onto each other using either a noisy or solid approach. And then, yeah, they didn't specify how do you choose the specific circle or the specific approach of splashing. They didn't specify. So what I would do is I could pass in a value or whatever, but what I would do is I'll choose randomly. Let's do a random choice, right? So random it is, right? Because we're not told. So I need to, there's the C time, which is fine. So now I'm gonna come here and do it randomly. So I'm gonna choose between 1 and 0, 1 and 2. 1 will be noisy splasher, 2 is solid splasher. So standard namespace random, and then modded by, remember 2 minus 1 is just 1, that's the range. So 1, and then starting point is 1. And then I'll make it random. So what I'll do is I'll make it underscore private. Oh, okay, okay, doesn't matter. So I'll just create it here int num, right? I'm gonna call it num. And I know it's going to be a number that's very small between 1 and 0, 1 and 2. So there's no need for me to allocate integer, which is capable of storing up to 4 billion. That's a lot of space being wasted. So I'm gonna make it unsigned short, num is equals to that. And I keep forgetting to put the semicolon. So terminate, and then now I can choose between if it's 1 or 0, 1 or 2, I mean. So the range is 1 and then plus 1 to start at 1. So if num equals 1, then I said it's a noisy splasher. And then else if num is equals to 2, then I know it's a solid splasher. So this will be solid splasher. It's up to you what approach you use. Then this will be noisy splasher. right? So let's instantiate. So the way it works, right? You might be like, well, I have a variable of only type color splash. So what should I do? Should I create the noisy splasher and the solid splasher instances here? Well, yes and no. You could do that, but there's this feature in programming whereby if on the right hand side, right, underscore splasher, if on the left hand side, I mean the left hand side, you can have the base class variable instance and then instantiate it to a new child class. Why is this possible? Because what's on the left hand side, it's possible because what's on the left hand side, what's on the right hand side, right, is what's on the left hand side. So what do I mean? The right hand side is a left hand side. So meaning that if I initialize it to a solid splasher here, that means solid splasher is a color splasher. So my left hand side needs to be the base class, and then the right hand side needs to be the child class or the derived class. If you swap them, that's wrong because what you're trying to say when you swap them, you're trying to say the base class or the child class is a base class, which is wrong. You can't have fruit as the base class. You can't have this, right? You can't have a let's say on this side you have apple, and then you're saying it's a new fruit. This is wrong. This is very wrong. Why? Because is a fruit an apple? No, not all fruits are apple. So that's wrong. But then if you have it in this way, you have a fruit instance on the left-hand side, and then you say new apple. What this means, it means that an apple is a fruit, and it's always the case that an apple is a fruit. So hence that's allowed. Remember, this fruit variable is of type fruit. So this is allowed. It will work perfectly fine. So that's why you don't have to actually create those variables, right? So I'm just gonna leave that comment there. And then, yeah. So underscore splash as it goes to new. We said noisy, right? So noisy splasher. And we'll just use the default constructor for noisy splasher. And for both, even solid, underscores splasher is equals to new solid splasher. But then remember, when you deallocate, it doesn't matter. So let's go. I think we didn't deallocate. Did we deallocate this fixed splasher? Splasher. Yeah, we did deallocate. So that's fine. The deallocating, we deallocate whatever that splasher was allocated. Also, yeah, remember noise splasher and what we don't have the header files included. Yes, we need to include them. So yeah, so here okay, here inside remember another, okay, this is going to be really annoying, a really annoying thing, but let's do it. So here I need to include, okay, I don't include the header files. Remember, you don't include the header file, you do forward declarations. Yeah, so class noise splasher, and then class solid splasher. And then inside the ujimage.cpp, that's when you include the corresponding header files. So hash include noisy splasher, and then hash include solid splasher. So we actually technically do not need this because I'm not calling anything from color splasher, not even a method, not even a construct. So I do not need the noisy splasher, the color splasher, the base class. So now I build, and then I think noisy splasher does not have a no args constructor. So let me go back and check. Yeah, it doesn't have a no args constructor. So what we could do is we could create the no args constructor. I don't know what position it's going to be in, like what's the default position, but then we're just going to come up with some constant. I'll just say it's 0. So static const unsigned short, and then default underscore position. We'll just say 0 or 1. So I'm going to say 1, and then noisy splasher.cpp, which is a bit far. And then I'm going to come here and then I'm going to say noisy splasher, then noisy splasher. And then remember, we just do constructor chaining, right? So I need to chain it to this constructor here or to my base class, right? So to my base class, you see that now I need to make, this is a default construct. Now I need to make use of default values. So I'm going to say color splasher. And I think if I recall, color splasher has constants, right? We just use the constants inside. Oh, it doesn't have. Okay, I thought it was going to have. So in order to avoid redefining things, right? Let's just create the color splashes here. So this is a small radius and a big radius. So let me do it here, right? So let me say color splasher. Let me create an args constructor, and then my class constants. So it'll be static const uj color, right? That uj color will be default pixel, which is just okay. If you look at the practical, they said it should be by default. Each is 254, and then the probability set randomly, but I'll just set it to 1. And then static const unsigned short default small radius. So it's default small radius. So say small radius is 50, and then static const unsigned short default underscore large radius. We'll say that's twice, so 100 and okay, let's say 3 times 150. So we have our constants. So that I just call these constants from my base class to make things simple for myself. And then since I want to use them I want to use this constants, this constants, right, only inside of my child classes. So I can put them in the private section or protected section, I mean, to say that it's protected, meaning that it should only be known by the child classes or derived classes. So I can call them directly. Because if I put them here, that means, remember, it's a static. That means I need to always specify the color, the 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 name of my class. So let me go to color splasher.cpp, and then I'm going to say color splasher, and then color splasher, no args constructor or parameterless constructor. Then I chain it to my other parameterized constructor, and then this will be default pixel, right? And then comma default small radius, and then default large radius. So now I have this parameterless constructor here. I can chain my parameterless constructors of my child classes to this parameterless constructor inside of this class. So technically now I didn't need to actually make it protected, but it's fine. I didn't need to make this protected, but it's fine. You can put it in wherever you see fit, whether public or protected. Why am I saying so? Because I just figured out something that for all my no args constructors, it seems like it's also not the inside solid splash. Yeah, this was very careless. So noisy splasher, I chain it to my parameterless constructor inside of my base class. Done. That's why I needed to create it inside of my base class to make things easier for me. So I'm gonna go to my solid splasher, create a no args constructor. I just don't want to call the parameterized one because that's a lot of parameters that I have to pass, which makes me work overtime when I shouldn't. So solid splasher, and then chain it to my base classes constructor, no parameterless constructor. So this should fix those issues, right? Um, oh yeah, const expression. Um, yeah, it's a UJ color. There's multiple values. You have to say const expression, not not just const. Void cannot have a sieve quantifier. Oh, so check range. You see the check range, right? You see, I made a problem here. I didn't specify that it's part of UJ image, so I totally forgot. Didn't see that part. Yeah, so that's fixed. And then, so token. Oh, I said comma instead of a semicolon there to terminate. I have been making a lot of errors lately. This is so not like me. So could undefined reference to this distance formula, blah blah blah. Color splasher. Oh yeah, it's in the color splasher. Yeah, so yeah, now you need to be very careful with comp sci. It's something that you have to be really careful. So remember, okay, distance is there, but let's just double check something. Let me go to color splasher. But yeah, there it is. It's protected. It is there. There's the distance function. So 1, 2, 3, 4 parameters. And then I'm going to go to color splasher.cpp and then 1, 2, 3. So there's the distance function. So it seems like I need to, but I did add, if I'm not mistaken, in the header file, I did add, there it is. I didn't include the whole header file because in order to inherit, you need to inherit from a complete class. You can't do forward declaration. So undefined reference. How is it not knowing that that's from? Okay, so it sometimes gets confused. Let me try to include the header file again, which you shouldn't do, but let me try to include it again here and see if the code blocks will stop generating that error. Well, it doesn't. So color splasher unsigned. Why is it saying undefined reference when it is there? I don't know whether now should I make it public since because this noise, remember noise splasher inherits, so it should have access to it. You see, there's the inheritance. I do not know why it's refusing to pick it up because this is my color splasher and it is implemented, so it is there. So clearly C++ is acting up. So double distance function there is, which returns a double, right? So it returns a value. So it should be able to pick that up. So let me check noisy splasher.cpp. So let me see. Okay, there's the distance, and then I pass in a row, a column, X center and Y center. And all of them are unsigned short, so it's of the right type. That's not an issue. I guess C++ is just acting up. So let me just check my compiler settings. So I'm gonna put this on the side so that you can see everything. So I'm gonna go to my compiler settings. I just wanted to make sure that I did pick the standard. Okay, I did pick. So I'm not sure why it's not picking it up. So it's here, noise splasher, undefined reference. How can you say undefined reference when the header file is included? So let me go to noise splasher. So you see the header file is included. And then okay. So it is included undefined. So let me go to noises. What is color splasher? Let's make it public. Let's see if that will make a difference. But it is protected and I am inheriting, so it shouldn't have any issues. So I've made it public, right? Let's see. It's still saying undefined. This is weird. Okay, so let me undo that. So let me just try typing it from scratch, that distance function, right? Or that function that calculates the distance. Let me try to type it and see if if it's going to autocomplete for me. Distance. Yeah, you see, there's the distance function, right? It is picking it up. And then RC row, no, R center, X center, I mean, X center. And then you see it's even picking it up. It's part of color splasher. So let me put it here outside and see if that call will be picked up or it will still complain. Let me see. How come it's not picking up this function? What's the issue here? This is very odd. And I can just transfer this. Okay, let me try compiling it via the terminal and see if the error persists, if I get the same error. Okay, so CD to change directory to move into that specific directory or folder. Since some of the folders have spaces in them, so I need to put it into double quotes. Then change every backslash to a forward slash. So forward slash and then forward slash and forward slash and then clear and then ls. So that's everything, right? So G++, everything asterisk that ends in a .cpp. And then the object file or the output file should be named main. Let's see what error if we get the error here, then yeah, something is wrong, but let's see. Oh yeah, so it is picking up that error even here. But how is it undefined when the function was created? That's something I'm failing to understand here. How can it say it's not defined when it is actually created? So let's try to fix that. Let's see. So there's color splasher, public, and then you have the double, which is protected, meaning that if I go to a class that's a child class, then it'll be public within that class. So if this error persists, I'm just going to declare it inside the child classes and repeat it over and over again, because at this point, I don't know what's wrong with color space, why it's not picking it up. So let me go back. Let me go to color. Oh, it could be, okay, I think I see the error. It could be the fact that I didn't specify that when I was implementing that this distance is part of color splash. So let me go to CPP file. Yeah, I was wondering why it's not picking it up. So yeah, I didn't specify that it's part of color splash. So that's why it wasn't picking up, because I was confused. Why wouldn't it pick it up? So yeah, that's fine. So if you get undefined reference, just know you must always confirm this in your child classes or in the class that you've created that function that's giving you problems. Um, so done, and then build again. Okay, so we're gonna get output, right? Should we? Yeah, it's going to see out, right? So we will get output. So let me just test it out here on the terminal. So clear, and then so you see now I'm retyping over and over. So it's best to create a batch file for a set of repetitive tasks. If you are repeating some tasks, you just create a batch file, and then instead of always typing them, you just run the batch file. So I'm gonna create a run.bat meaning batch file. And then I'm gonna open it inside Notepad++. And then to comment in a batch file, you type ram followed by the comment. So comment will be, this means I'm compiling every CPP file. So G++ asterisk dot CPP, create an output file called main. And then here, let me see, do you say, what's that word? Is it print? I'm not sure. To just, but then it's fine. So RAM, another comment, what's the comment? What am I doing here? So I'm running the executable and generating an image, right? So how do you run? You say main.exe. That's it. So this will output those pixels, right? But I want to redirect that output to another file and generate a file, but it's fine. I'm going to go back to my terminal and then just ls. You see that we now have a batch file. So run.bat. Inside this terminal, you're always gonna say ./run.bat like this. Dot means in the current folder, and then / means run this specific file, execute it, right? So remember, the batch file is something that's executable that can be run. So we'll see an output here of the pixels. You see, those are the pixels. So I'm going to clear and then do this. Okay, you see that we just saw the pixels. So I need to redirect that output to a file. So after running the executable, I need to put the greater than sign. Look at the direction of the greater than sign. It means whatever was supposed to be displayed when you run the executable, send it to that file on the right-hand side. So I'm going to call it image.ppm. And then don't forget to always save Control S. And then I'm going to clear. So that output, I don't want to see it here. I want it to be redirected to a file. So there it is. Now I need to go here. There should be an image.ppm file here. So I need to refresh. So after refreshing, there it is, image.ppm, because it's a P3 image, right? So far, the way they wrote the code, right? The main, Dr. Stung only put the 10 rows and 10 columns. You can just increase them as you like. But we want to see if it lists some output, then we can work on improving our code and fixing so that it outputs the right thing that's expected for us to output. Yeah, so you see, by default, it's going to be that size, right? It's going to be that image. So we want to read from the file. So it seems like, so let me close this. Seems like, okay, it seems like the bonus, I'll do it in another video. So we did read from the file, but then seems like, you see, that seems like it's not actually outputting, right? So since we have those, yeah, it's that thing. I was thinking about it too. Is this issue of when do we actually set the rows and columns? So here, when this object is created, we have those rows and columns, right? Which is going to be default. But then when we read from the file, we actually update the rows and columns, right? So it should actually show a bigger image, right? It should show a bigger image. And then testing splash functionality. So, oh yeah, even splashing, or splashing is fine. It'll call the specific splash for that specific class. So that's what we call polymorphism, because it depends on which splash was instantiated. So if we go up there with the splash method, where's that splash? Yeah. So you see the splash method, it depends on what splash underscore splash was initialized instantiated to. If it was instantiated to a noisy splasher, it's going to call the splash method from the noisy splasher. So that's pretty much what you call it. This is actually now both delegation and polymorphism. So it depends on which color splasher was instantiated. So this means this function or this code takes many forms. So, or this object, let's focus on the object. The object splash takes many forms. So hence polymorphism. Poly means many forms, right? So polymorphism. And then so let me look at the reading file part, when we read from the file. Yeah, I think the issue is here when you read from the file. So remember, when you read from the file, we get those specific rows and columns, right? So we actually need to reallocate our object to these actual rows and columns. So I need to reallocate my object or re-instantiate, but remember we have a helper method. So constructor helper method, it expects the rows. So I'm gonna pass in underscore rows, underscore columns, and then the default pixel will just be default pixel. So yeah, so we need to construct the object again because we have this different set of rows and columns. It should, hypothetically speaking, show a bigger image now. So let me, okay, I just need to run the batch file. So it should, hypothetically speaking, show a bigger image. So we'll see. We'll see though. Okay, now I'm opening Unity. Um, so let me close that. So what's the time? This is the old version. So let me refresh. So 950. So this is the latest. So it needs to be a bigger image. So it's still small. So something is not right. The image is still small. It's still 10 by 10. So clearly something is not right. Let me go back to my main because I think this should be fine here. We reinstantiate it, right? So okay, before we reallocate memory, we could delete the memory first, call the destructor, and then after we've destroyed it, then we reallocate. We could do that, but then let me see. So let's see here. We create an object obj image, right? 10 rows and 10 columns. We do this and then we splash, right? And then we copy into obj2. And then obj2, it reads from text file. Then we output that object after we've read from the text file. So let me see the binary file. I wasn't looking at the binary file. Remember circles.dat, that's the binary file. So let's check if it has some output. Yeah, it has some output, as you can see. But yeah, I see that it's weird output, right? So it seems like it's very small. So what I need to check, am I reading from the file properly? That's the question. So let me go here. I get the line and then I insert the line inside the string stream. Then I extract all the different values. And then for that specific row and column, do that. So we could try and do this. Let me call the destructor first, right? Here, let me call the destructor first and then allocate it again. So let's try doing that. Build and run. As long as the numbers on the screen are more, then we know we're doing the right thing. If it's still small, then it's still wrong. So it's still working with the old value. So let me just double check something. Um, where's the assignment operate? Okay, yeah, the assignment operator is fine because we might want to change the object. So I shouldn't return a const reference. I should return a UJ reference. So this is tricky. How come it's not doing anything? Okay, let's do this, right? So let me comment out this and then comment out this and then just create UJ image by default, right? As a default thing. Then I'm going to clear here and then run with the batch file. Oh yeah, so I need to comment out some lines. So comment out this and then clear, run the bat. Um, I'm trying to understand why it's not actually, the image actually is not changing. It's still using that default small image. So rerun. Okay, okay, now it's bigger. So yeah, now it's at least bigger, right? So you see 800 by 800. So yeah, 800 by 800. So I'm gonna do that. And then okay, so I think it becomes, yeah, it has become smaller, right? That's true. Because why? We use the assignment operator here. The image becomes the same size as this one over here. But then the issue is when I do this here, right? When I do this here over here, I need to read from that file, which contains a lot of things right from the file. So that means it should be able to restructure this object, right? So it's fine, or at least should be reading from the file. Let me see. Where's UJ image? Where we read from the file. So it's fine. Let me comment out those two parts. It's fine. It doesn't matter how, it actually doesn't matter how big the image is, as long as the image is read. Oh, let me see. Oh yeah. Now I see. I'm thinking it's not working, but it is actually it is actually working because if you look at this file, remember all of them are 254s, so it's a white image. So it's fine. It is reading. The issue that means it's now splashing. That's the issue that we have, the issue of having to splash. So what we could do is we can call the splash method on obj image 2. So obj image 2 dot splash. So I wasn't splashing. So let's try to splash now and see if the output changes. Hopefully the output changes. Okay, and then I need to refresh because if you don't refresh, you still have old information. You think your file is not working, but you just haven't refreshed. I have to refresh because I'm working with that, so yeah, it's a bit different. So okay, it is. It's quite small, right? But let me see. Let's run it again. Remember, it's random, right? It's random. So what I can do, right? Because I want the circle one. Uh, okay, remember both of them should be circles, right? Even if it's noisy or solid. Yeah, it should be fine, even if it's noisy or solid. Okay, let's just do this instead. Let me see it in a big form, right? So this is just one a few pixels. So let me make it 800 by 800, right? To make the image larger so that I see what's the real issue here. Because if I just see as pixels, you think that it's actually squares, but it might not be squares. So let me open the image again. Okay. Hmm. Interesting. I drew a donut. That's interesting. Okay. So what should happen here? I think my logic is a bit off, right? So you see, when you make the image a bit larger, that's when you start to see the actual changes. So what's the issue here is I don't know how I got a donut, But yeah, it's almost there. So I got a donut, I think, because of my logic, right? It depends on which splash you're creating. You see, like the main issue here with the splash, okay, that was a weird coincidence. I got the donut. Um, okay, splash. You splash and then you copy and then you read, but then you have to splash again to actually see the change. So if you don't splash again, because I'm reading from that file, so it will have the same information, a default white image, which is a problem. So I would have to splash again. So since there's something a bit flawed in my with my logic, let's try to decipher that, right? So that means if you look at this code currently is right now, you will have what is this? A donut. So it's still doing something, right? But then it's not quite accurate, right? 100% what we're looking for. So let me see. You see, that's the thing. We need to use these variables, right? Like for example, here I have number of circles. So I need to use number of circles. So so number of circles. So yeah, if you look at this circle, right, you see there's a plethora of circles. So you need to choose a random point and then make it a smaller or bigger, whatever. But you see, it's somewhat getting close, right? It's almost there, right? That means our logic is slightly flawed, slightly. The thing is, they don't tell you everything. They don't tell you, okay, do this, then do that. So that means we need to remember we also have the number of circles value that we need to work with. So if you scroll down here, yeah, so solid splash represent an attribute represent the number of circle set via the constructor that will be drawn on the image. So you need to use the number of circles, right? So the way it works, right? Now I see how we're going to do that use that number of circles. So like I said, it seems like we need to use a while loop. So solid splash, yeah, solid splash. Remember what I talked about here, this if statement. It will run exactly once, which is a problem. I don't want it to have like once and then it has that small dot. No, I do not want it to do that. I want it to run multiple times. But then remember what they said. They said it's a random row and column. So that means I don't actually need to go through all the rows and columns. I just need to do a while loop and use the number of circles so that it executes as many times as the number of circles. Yeah, I think so. Because you need to do that. You shouldn't use the rows and columns for this one. So let's do that. So let's remove that and then those two lines. And then I'm gonna copy all of this. Copy. Since I saw this place, right? So wow, underscore number of circles is greater than or equals to 0, right? So as long as it's from 0 and above, the moment it becomes negative, then we stop because there's no more circle. Or you can say what is greater than 0. Yeah, you could do that. And then you put in your code here. So this will be the number of circles that we need to create. The question is, will it create the circle now if we only have an if statement? So it needs to generate that random row and column, right? And then that random row and column, I need to find its distance according to where I currently am. So you see, I need to actually put back the loop, but then I need to find a way to integrate that while loop with this number of circles, right? I think I kind of have an idea. Yeah, yeah, I kind of have an idea now. So number of circles, so I'm gonna undo this. I kind of see what to do now. So I have this for loop, right? And then remember this will draw the circle once, right? But then I wanted to check every single pixel. So what I would do is I'll cut that code and say while underscore num of circles is greater than 0. And then there it is. I draw that circle, right? So it's going to draw that circle. And then now I shouldn't generate this random row and random column always inside here. I should draw it once for one circle. So I should find the radius once because that will be that one circle, right? So the formula changes a bit. So I go through the number of circles and then I calculate the center for the first circle. And then I find a random integer so that I choose to use a smaller radius or a bigger radius. And then I go through all of my pixels and draw that specific circle, right? Which is pretty straightforward. Then I'm going to go to solid splasher. I need to create a constant, right? Static const unsigned short, which represents the default what number of circles. So num of circles is too long, so default circles, let's say we just want 5 circles, right? So I'm just going to set it to default circles, right? So I'm going to, and something is wrong with my code. That's why things are not working properly. Because remember, if I chain it to color splasher only initializes 3, which is color, smaller, and large. So the rest I need to initialize myself. So number of circles is equals to default circles, right? As I've done here, right? So I do the same for my noise splasher. The position is to be initialized. So I think I do have a default position. So let me say underscore position is equals to default position. So yeah, I just forgot to initialize that. So since I have the number of circles initialized, I set it to 5. How many circles does this one have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this one is 10. So let's double. Let's say 10 circles. Noisy splasher. Not noisy. Solid splasher. So I set this to 10. And then the radius, you see there's quite a huge disparity or huge difference between the smaller circle and the bigger circle. So, oh, and it chooses randomly. Okay. So, yeah, okay. So it should be fine. So I'm gonna go to UJ. Where is it? Noisy. Is it noisy splasher? No, it's not noisy. It's solid splasher. So now this number of circles will be initialized, even if I use the default construct. So I think it should be somewhat different now. I'm not sure about the noisy splasher since I haven't made any changes there. So did you mean row? Oh, since I've changed my things here, so I need to say call it as it is there. So obj rows, because rows is actually declared within the for loop. If it's declared within the for loop, that means it's only visible within the for loop. That's why it's complaining at me. So that's fine. And then you could just go to file and then please save everything, right? And then click save everything to save your changes. And then I'm gonna clear and then run my batch file again. And then we'll see if now the output is a bit better. It's not it's hopefully it's a bit better now. It's not the way it was showing previously. So come on, load. Okay, it's loading, so I just have to wait for it. It needs to have like different types of circles. Okay, it's still a donut shape, which is kind of a problem because it needs to choose a random point, let's say somewhere there, then draws the circle, and then chooses a random point there and then draws a circle. Okay, I think it's choosing the other one, the noisy splasher. I think that's the case here. So let's look at noisy splasher. We need to use that position. I don't know how. I don't know what's the position for. Okay, so let me do this just for testing purposes, right? I'm gonna go to where I instantiate here, and then I won't make it random. I'll just choose I'll comment out this one. Come on. I'll comment out noisy splasher. I just want to work with solid splasher and test and see how far. Okay, so comment out this, comment out. Yeah, just initialize it to noisy solid splasher. Then I rerun. I want to see how solid splasher looks because I think that donut it's calling noisy splasher. Mm, it really is taking its time, eh? What happened now? I didn't change much. I just decided to only instantiate it to solid splash. Okay, I guess could be the terminal. I don't know. Let me try and compile again. Okay, yeah, something is wrong now. I just removed the choices and then now it's complaining. That's weird. Yeah, what I did was just create a solid splash. Let me put it there. And then solid splash. Wow. Oh, I see my issue. Hey, see this thing of not being very careful. Number of circles is this will be an infinite loop. So I need to decrement here. So decrement. So that it's actually in an infinite loop. So terminate and then clear. And then let's try to run it again. There was an infinite loop. Okay, it seems like it's still okay. Yeah, it was in an infinite loop. I didn't, yeah, so didn't see that. Yeah, be very careful with your while loops. You should draw different circles. Yeah, at least it's different circles, right? And then yeah, I think this should be fine. He says different circles and he needs to choose, but then it's not alternating. I think it's not alternating, like choosing the different between the different radiuses, right? Remember the radius is supposed to be random. I think yeah, this part needs to be within the radius part, only the radius part. Let me see. I'm gonna draw that circle. No, it's fine. It's fine where it is. I need to generate random. Yeah, it's everything is fine where it is. Yeah, so it is drawing those circles over there, right? I don't know how they did this image, but at least it is drawing random circles around, right? And then let's look at the noisy splasher. What is it supposed to do? So the noisy splasher is supposed to a pixel that falls within the larger of the two must be drawn. Wait, a pixel that falls within the larger of the two radius must be drawn. Oh, we were supposed to find the maximum here. I think I didn't do that part. That's why my noisy splasher wasn't working. Let's double check. I don't remember doing. Yeah, yeah, that's why it was outputting in a donut, sort of like donut form. So let me undo this, right? So whether it's a noisy splasher or solid splasher. So noisy splasher, remember, you need to choose the values between the two. The bigger, they said choose between the bigger of the two, right? So I'm going to do this. The larger of the two radiuses. So you need to find the maximum. So since you won't necessarily have time, so you need to do this. You need to say standard namespace and say max. Right? There's a max function over here, which takes in two types to find the maximum between them. So I want to compare smaller radius and larger radius, and then whatever is bigger should be saved. So double large, I'll call it large or larger, right? And then they said we should use that larger radius. So underscore larger, right? So that means this else if statement is no longer mandatory or needed. And then I need to draw it with 100% probability. So random value, and then check if that value is less than or equals to 100. So I think now it should be a bit fine or a bit different. The output should be a bit different. Mm. Oh, it's not underscore larger. It's larger. Num was not declared. Okay, I did comment it out. So let me uncomment. And then this is the best feeling ever. So our program runs, we are happy, and then we run the batch file. It says the larger of the two, so you need to find the maximum between the two. I don't know which output is that, the one that we're seeing. Is it the output for the noisy splasher or for the other one? It says with 100% probability, so yeah, it's kind of there. Oh, I think it's fine. What I'm assuming, I think it's fine, right? I think it's fine because I think the way this memo is, I think we're done. The way this memo is, right? You see, there's the dots that I have, right? But then on top of the dots, they also drew the solid splasher, random cycles. So we did do it correctly. So yeah, here they just show you, it's like they're combining the two outputs. So there's the solid splasher, no, the noisy splasher with the 100% probability, and then that. So that means it's impossible for us to actually output it in this way, unless in the splash method, we combine our code, right? So let me show you what I mean. So unless we combine the code, then we have that same output. So let me show you what I mean, right? So what I would do is I will call, okay, this function, this color, okay, you shouldn't do this, right? I'm just doing it for testing purposes to show you what I'm talking about, that it's solid. One of the things is they've meshed or put them together. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to, yeah, you see how it becomes a problem because I don't have the number of cycles. Yeah, let me just leave it. I won't have the actual number of cycles, but yeah, let me see they say the position, right? I don't know about the position for noise splash. How are we going to use the position? I don't know. I don't see where we used it. I don't know how we're going to use it. So that means my larger radius needs to be a bit bigger. so that it encompasses half. So it should be around rows divided by 2 or divided by 3. Still big, but not as big as like filling the whole screen. So what I can do is I can set my, since underscore larger radius is big, okay, it's fine. I can set it here or set it there, set it the other side. That's fine. So let me just set it here. So I'm going to say underscore larger radius is equals to y center or x center, whatever, to basically be rows or columns divided by 2 so that it's a bit bigger. And you don't have to do this, find this maximum, right? Because larger is stored in the larger variable. I mean, duh. So you don't have to do this, but it's just me showing you that you could, if you didn't know which one was larger, you could use the max function. So I've made the radius a bit larger. Let me saying radius. So I've made the radius a bit larger. So those two diagrams that they combine into one image. That's why it kind of it you ask you'll be asking yourself how come it's not showing, right? So it's not showing the same as the output in the file. So you see now it's a bit bigger, right? You see there's the circle, even though the dots are a bit, you could choose black, right? You could make it black so that, I mean, black and white, so that you actually see. But there's the plain, there's the many dots there. So I don't want it to be like that big because if you look at this image, it's like divided by 3, right? This should be divided by 3. So I need to say divide by 3. So what I can do is I can just say obj image, right, dot get rows divided by 3. And then save and then rerun. So we're actually done with the solution, right? So this is the solution. You can't, it's impossible for you to add everything into one image. You can only generate separate, like the noisy on its own and the solid splasher on its own. That's, they're just showing you the image. It had both combined to show you how one should look. So yeah, I see this is better now. So we could draw onto this and then we have that output. We could do that. That's not an issue. The thing is, I do not want to change the solution. So I'm gonna leave it like this. Like I said, this finding the larger is not necessary because I mean, duh, it's called larger radius. You can just say, come here and say underscore larger radius. But I'm not gonna do that. I'm just showing you if you were supposed to find the maximum, you don't have to create your own function. So thanks for watching. In the next tutorial, hopefully today, I will upload one where we do the bonus. I think exception handling is the easier one to do, but also templates if you wanted to, but exception handling is the easiest. So thanks for watching. See you in the next tutorial. And don't forget to look at the description of the video when you're looking for the code. I'm going to upload it now since I'm done with the code. So let me stop recording.